Hey everybody, this is James from South Texas RC and BRB Racing. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. So today what I want to cover with you is Traxxas overheating on its 3S and 4S platforms. Now for the ones of you that have been following the channel, you'll know that this is not a 100% true blue Hoss that was here. It was a transition project that we were calling the Hossapede. The reason why I did it is I was tired of the body clips constantly ripping through the body shell, so I wanted to go clipless. I looked into it. Hey, the Hoss is only just a little bit longer version of the Stampede, right? So what do I need? I need one body shell, one center chassis, one drive shaft, and two shock towers, and there is the birth of the Hossapede. Of course, over time, I did put the 2.8 sledgehammer tires on it. I even put the center diff in it, got the Hoss light kit and everything else. The only thing that I did not change was the speed control, because it's the same as the Hoss. It's the 3S, but the motor was different. This is the 3500 Valenian, and it does call for the 540 XL Valenian motor, and that is a 2400 kV. So I still had overheating that transitioned from the Stampede into the Hoss, and you talk to all the gurus out there and they say, oh no, it's because you put the bigger tires. Well, no, because the Stampede and the Rustler say it's an acceptable application on the Traxxas website to run these tires. Now, of course, mind you, I'm not dumb. I'm going to change my gearing. I'm going to gear down for a larger tire because I know about it's going to cause an extra load on the electronics. So I'm not saying that I tried to stick 100% by any of the Traxxas legends on there for gearing. I didn't. I played by the rules. I did what I needed to do, but I still had a problem with overheating. So then I start looking into paperwork and stuff, and like I said, mind you, I'm gonna tell you, this is just my own personal perception. None of the information that I am giving to you all from the Traxxas websites or anything was given to me by Traxxas at any point in time stating, hey, this is what actually is the issue. No, this is only off of my own personal perception. So the first thing I looked into is a printout, and I'll read it off to y'all, is because the motor and the speed control have to work harder, this generates a larger amount of heat within the electronics. True. The electronics can only handle so much before they overheat. True. The stock gearing in each Traxxas vehicle comes out of the box with and has been tested to ensure optimal performance for all around use during normal use. So I want to hang on the words to where it says that the Traxxas vehicle comes out of the box and has been tested to ensure the optimal performance. So with that being said, we'll look at the Stampede legend first. And the Stampede, outside the box, you get this kind of an advertisement. It tells you that an 11/54, a 3S LiPo, it's on here. But of course, like I said, I'm not dumb. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to look at the legend. The legend does tell you that if you want to go in here for a 3S LiPo running, you should change it down to a 9 or a 10 on that pinion gear, because they're going to work harder, you're going to have more heat. So, but I do want to point out, it does say that the out-of-box setup is going to be a 6 or 7 nickel metal battery or a 2S LiPo. That's the out-of-the-box tested. And then I go into the Hoss specification, and it's going to be the same thing. It tells you that it's an 11/54 as a 3S LiPo. But once again, I'm not a dummy. I'm going to go back over here, I'm going to look at the legend, and it tells you that you need to switch it down to an 11, 12, or 13. And of course, once again on this one, it tells you the out-of-box setup recommended is going to be a 6 or 7 cell or a 2S LiPo. But that's the out-of-the-box settings. And then of course you have to go here. The only thing that's frustrating is when you look at the side of a box, and it tells you that your 3S LiPo is a 14/54, but then your legend tells you you've got to change your gearing. And the same thing over here. It tells you that you're on the side of the box, it's 11/54, box stock gearing is a 3S LiPo, but then you go here, and of course, common sense, you got to bump the gearing down a little bit. But what I'm going on about is the overheating problem with the Valenian system. And I'm going to call it that there's not enough headroom in the system to actually run it as a 3S. Of course, right there, it does tell you the optimal performance is a 2S. We'll just leave it at that. So this is a printout that I got off of someone else's website, because the simple fact of it is that when you ask about the specs of the Valenian 3500 motor, they tell you that it's not public information. This guy, however, wants to call it a 65 amp constant and 100 amp the peak burst. This is accurate information here. Of course, the continuous is 200 amps, and then the peak is 320 amps that are applied from that VXL3 speed controller. So continuous is basically like when you're coasting, just coasting, driving, say like in your car, a certain speed limit. You're coasting, saying you're doing 55, then you're going to be running 200 amps. You're going between 55, 60, 70, 55, 60, 70, back and forth, up and down. You're going to be in that 300 amp peak. So then I look at the max, and the same thing with the max. Theirs is dead on this one. The advertised on the side of the box, the 23 over, was it 50? Yeah, 23 over 50 is application for both 3 and 4S. However, when I reach out about the headroom in that unit to them, I kind of get the same thing when I asked about the 3500 Valenian motor. In the chat, it tells you you can go here, but there's no information about the maximum or minimal. It just says outside of this information. Unfortunately, the specification is not something that we have published publicly, nor do I have it available to me. So with that being said, I cannot tell you what the minimal or maximal is on that 4S unit in the max. And then of course, here's the rest of my, I'll call it my madman notes that I have made for my journey of overheating. So another thing to look at is on batteries. The Traxxas batteries are a 25C. So the way that you would come up with the math of this is, say you have a 5,000 milliamp battery. It's going to be a representation, the number, the 5 in the front for that 5,000. And then say it's a 5200, then it would be 5.2. So in this case, it's a 5,000. So you would take that 5 times your C rating, 25, and that's how you would get what they call the maximum amps applied that the battery can produce. So on the Traxxas battery, say a 5,000 milliamp will give you 125 amps, and then the 7600 will give you 190 amps. Of course, here's an aftermarket battery here, 5.2 times 35 C rating and 50 C rating. Those are 182 and 260. And then of course my big batteries here, my 3S 7600 times your 75C is applying 570 amps is applied, or possible applied, from that battery. So with that being said, have I run Traxxas batteries and still had an overheating problem? Yes, not as fast with this guy. Not as fast, but a lot faster with this. So not as fast, I'm going to say not as fast, was around about anywhere from 11 minutes on hard run 3S Traxxas battery, versus this guy here was more along the lines of 5 to 6 minutes would overheat. So yes, there is a lot to do with your C rating of your battery, because it's the amps applied. So then I move more towards, RPM study. This is going to be your Valenian motor. This one here is going to be the Valenian, the 2400 kV, and this is an ARMA 3200 kV motor here. And of course, the way you do it is you take it's 1 volt times into your kV is how you do the math. So one cell is 4.2 cells. So here's the case here. So you take a 3500 times the 8.40 on a 2S battery, gives you 29,400. Now mind you, this is unloaded RPMs. And then of course there's your 3S. Over here, this is your 2S, your 3S, and your 4S. And once again, 2S and 3S. So I'm going to say the safe haven for motor is going to be 40K, is where you want to be. 40K unloaded RPMs on a motor. So the question at hand is, how did I actually fix my problem with overheating? Well, of course, as you can clearly see, what happened is something got pulled out. That's how the issue got fixed. So when I started shopping around the market and looking to see what was out there, what I put into this is this. I put a 100 amp continuous with a 650 max burst. This is the system that I put in it, followed by, I did want a lower kV, so I put the 3150 kV motor in it. They claim this one here is a 100 amp, not the peak, but it just says the continuous. I didn't find any information on the peak burst, but the one on the one guy's site said 65 amps, and this one says 100. That's a far cry from each other. Along with this one here is a 650 maximum burst, and it's only 320 on the Valenian. So that's what I'm talking about, headroom. Having plenty of headroom before you hit that glass ceiling. So this has a lot more headroom than the Valenian does. And so far, I can run this truck hard. I'm using this battery right here. And I can tell you what, I'm running at 30, 35 plus minutes till I can deplete the pack completely, and I never overheat. My speed control temps are at 125. My motor temps are sitting at about 154. My battery temps are sitting anywhere from 89. There's no more overheating problem. So what actually fixed the overheating problem? And like I said, you can't say it's just that one affected system, because I have my Slash, my two-wheel drive Slash, and of course it is a monster Slash, and it had overheat issues. The 4x4, same deal, monster tires, the 2.8 Pro lines still have an overheating problem, and they're geared appropriately for that application. Like say for instance on the 4x4 Slash, that one there, I went ahead, put the Pro line, the 2.8 tires, or the 2.5, somewhere around there, and I geared it as if it were a Stampede because of the larger tire. So I was running 11/54. You get in the woods of running the 3S, I did bump it down to the 9 and 10s, but guess what? You still have an overheating issue on that vehicle. So I started thinking, you can't really blame it on the batteries, not all of it, because yes, if you do run a 25C battery in the vehicle, you're doing less amps applied and you're going to get less heat resistance. At the same given time, you go higher in your C ratings and milliamp hours, it does get hot quicker. When you change from a 2S, I gotta tell you, I ran this as a 2S with that system in there. It ran beautiful, no overheating problems. It did run warm, but no overheating problems. It ran really slow, but it ran okay. And when you put the 3S in there, it's mind-blowing, great power, but it immediately overheated. So the issue, I say, is going to lie within the electronics. The electronics do not have enough headroom in them, meaning before you hit that glass ceiling, there's not enough amperage that's there to be supported. The voltage is too much for it. So with the material at hand, I do want to call their VXL3 a 2S system. I really do. However, it can handle 3S, but does overheat. So in my own personal perception, that is a 2S. They run beautiful as a 2S, but nothing else. Unless you want to do just like some really, slow beat around with it, but still you can run to that, overheating issue. With the Max over there, like I said, I've run that thing 3S consistent, no issues, no problems, no overheat. But when you throw that 4S in there, yes, you will eventually overheat. So the higher you go also on that voltage, you find some overheating that's going on in these Traxxas models. And I'm just blaming it solely on there's just not enough headroom of the electronics. So I would have to say, the higher you go up in your amps, you're protecting the system and you're not getting that overheat. And of course, like I said, I ran that lower kV because I wanted something that was just a little bit, I was kind of trying to match it around the Arma, to be honest with you, because that 3200 kV with their system, I've had no overheat issues. I've had no problems whatsoever. But mainly, in conclusion, like I said, what I'm saying here is that the lower KVs, when you look at KV of a motor, of course, the higher you go in KV, like your 3500s, 4000s in that nature, you do have a very fast motor, but they're not a torque motor. So you want to run a smaller pinion in those cases. Your 2400 kV motors, they're not as fast, say, as a 4000 kV motor. And they can support, though, carrying a larger pinion gear because they're more of a torque-bearing motor. So if you gear appropriately between your, say, your 3500 kVs and your 2400 kV motors, you'll get the same results of speed. It's all in your gearing. You got to make sure your gearing is the proper mix and harmony. And I've done that with these. I've done my appropriate gearing. I've done fans. I've done everything. And of course, it's not just on this one Valenian system. It's on another one of mine, and multiple others that are out there that you see on other YouTube videos and stuff like, help me, I'm overheating. So it's not just an isolated problem with just one piece of the product. So I'll let you all decide exactly what you think the overheat problem is. This is just some information that I'm sharing. I just feel that that Valenian system just does not have enough headroom in that maximum amperage to handle running a 3S. It's not there. So I'm not dogging their product. I'm saying it runs beautiful as a 2S. It's a beautiful 2S application. But when you start to push it and you put that 3S in there, that's when you start to see that overheat happen. And you can blame it, you know, a little bit in battery. Yeah, the batteries do cause a little bit of a change up with the amount of amps that are applied to the system, but it's not the heart of the issue. I'm gonna go and grab the hose real quick, show you under the hood. So here's what we have under the hood. Of course, I did use their heat sink, but the problem was how it wraps around the bottom of the motor a little bit. I was not able to fit it in here, so I had to cut off about that much on both sides. Still leaving a loop though, but that way it would actually sit down in here. Of course, I'm running the Arma fans, and there's the speed control. And you know what? I have had absolutely zero, like I said, zero, multiple packs, zero overheating problems. Sometimes running at 30-35 minutes, hard bashing. Like I said, I checked my temps. My motors are running around about like 154, 160. Speed control sitting around sometimes 124, 125. Battery temps are 89. The issue has been eliminated. And of course, the gearing is still 54 over 12. So I'm playing by the rules on the gearing still. One thing though to point out about Traxxas is still talking about how that application says 6 or 7 cell nickel metal or 2S out of the box. Let's look at the battery tray real quick. So on this battery tray, the only way that I'm able to put this big battery, fit this in here, is what I had to do is put a longer screw and then like a piece of all thread right here to help raise this up to fit this fat battery in here. Now of course you run a Traxxas 3S 5000 milliamp battery in here, it fits. But I don't know, maybe my all-thread creation caused the overheating. I don't know. And of course, like you can see, there's the 3150 kV motor in it. And I tell you what, guys, this truck is a beast. I was getting really disappointed because I had put so much into this project to just have constant overheating problems. Oh yeah, and of course, I did go with the big kit, that big axle kit and everything. Really beefed up the truck, really nice. And if you do have that light kit, and of course it is made to where the light kit plugs into a Traxxas battery, and then you've done this change out of the system like I did, all you have to do is get a balance cord. You're going to use your red and your black on your outside, and then of course hook it to your red black here, and this will hook directly to the balance cord on your battery, and you can still run your lights. So just make an adapter, no issues, no problems at hand. So there you go, guys. Like I said, you make the decision off that information that I've given you. But in all honesty, I think what it is it's just their electronics do not have enough headroom to handle running a 3S. So if you have any questions about this, please reach out to me in the comments. I will answer them as soon as possible. Once again, this is James from South Texas RC and BRB Racing, and I am out.